What if everything you know about motivation is wrong? Every January, millions of people make the same promise. This year will be different. They buy a new notebook, download another productivity app, watch hours of motivational videos, set ambitious goals, wake up earlier, join a gym, delete social media, create the perfect morning routine. For a few days, everything feels possible. Then something happens. The excitement fades. The alarm clock becomes harder to answer. The gym feels further away. The notebook stays unopened. The habits disappear. Within weeks, most people are exactly where they started. Society has an explanation for this. You weren't motivated enough. It sounds logical. It feels true. But what if I told you that explanation has been misleading millions of people for decades? What if the very thing you've spent your entire life chasing, motivation, was never designed to carry you to success? Imagine discovering that some of the world's most disciplined people don't wake up feeling inspired every morning. They don't leap out of bed overflowing with determination. They don't rely on powerful speeches. They don't wait until they feel like it. Yet somehow, they keep showing up, day after day, year after year, while everyone else burns out. How? Neuroscientists believe the answer lies deep inside your brain, in a system that has almost nothing to do with motivation itself. And once you understand how that system works, you may never chase motivation again. Because the greatest obstacle standing between you and the life you want may not be laziness, it may not be intelligence, it may not even be discipline. It may simply be that you've been trying to solve the wrong problem. For decades, the self-improvement industry has sold one powerful idea. Find enough motivation, and everything else will follow. Books promised it, seminars sold it, social media glorified it. Every January, millions of people searched for it. Every Monday, they searched again. But if motivation is truly the secret to success, why do so many highly motivated people still fail? Why do New Year's resolutions collapse within weeks? Why do intelligent students procrastinate? Why do talented athletes stop training? Why do entrepreneurs abandon brilliant ideas? Why do people who desperately want to change continue repeating the same destructive habits? The answer surprised psychologists. Because motivation behaves more like an emotion than a skill, and emotions are temporary. If documentaries that uncover the hidden science behind the human mind fascinate you, subscribe to The Human Code. Every week we explore psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior through cinematic storytelling designed to help you understand yourself and the people around you. And if you've ever struggled to stay motivated, share this documentary with someone who needs to hear it. You might completely change the way they think about success. Here's something most people don't realize. Your brain wasn't designed to keep you motivated. It was designed to keep you alive. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors didn't need motivation to scroll endlessly through entertainment or postpone important work. Their biggest challenge was survival, finding food, avoiding predators, protecting their families, conserving energy whenever possible. That last part is critical. Your brain is incredibly efficient. It is constantly asking one question: how can I accomplish this while using the least amount of energy? That question kept our ancestors alive. Today, it quietly works against us. Every difficult task feels expensive. Writing, studying, exercising, learning a new skill, saving money. Your brain sees effort as energy expenditure. And unless there's an immediate reward, it encourages you to delay. Not because you're lazy, because your brain is doing exactly what evolution designed it to do. Think about the last time you planned to exercise. You probably imagined how good you'd feel. Afterward, better health, more confidence, greater energy. Yet when the moment finally arrived, your brain offered a different suggestion. Maybe tomorrow. Nothing about your goal changed, only your brain's calculation of effort. That's why motivation feels so unreliable. It isn't broken. It's temporary. Researchers studying human behavior have repeatedly observed the same pattern. People often confuse excitement with commitment. Excitement feels powerful. It creates momentum. It makes us believe lasting change has already begun. But excitement fades remarkably quickly. Commitment begins only after excitement disappears. That distinction changes everything. Because successful people aren't those who remain permanently motivated. They are the ones who continue acting after motivation leaves. This is where one of the biggest myths about success begins to collapse. We imagine high performers waking up inspired every day. In reality, many of them wake up feeling exactly like everyone else. The difference is not what they feel. The difference is what they do anyway. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as behavioral consistency. The behavior happens, whether the emotion is present or not. That single principle explains why two people with identical goals often experience completely different outcomes. One waits to feel motivated. The other starts before motivation arrives. Months later, their lives look completely different. Not because one possessed extraordinary willpower, because one understood something the other never learned. Action creates motivation far more often than motivation creates action. That idea sounds backwards. But modern neuroscience increasingly suggests it is true. And what researchers discovered next may completely change the way you think about discipline. The chemical that has been controlling you all along. For years, scientists believed motivation was driven by one simple idea. More dopamine meant more motivation. It sounded logical. After all, dopamine became known as the brain's feel-good chemical. Popular books, podcasts, and social media repeated the same explanation until it became accepted as fact. But neuroscience eventually revealed something far more fascinating. Dopamine isn't the chemical of pleasure. It's the chemical of anticipation. That difference changes everything. Imagine you're walking through a forest thousands of years ago. You haven't eaten all day. In the distance, you spot what looks like fruit hanging from a tree before you've even taken a bite. Your brain releases dopamine. Why? Because it believes a reward may be coming. Dopamine isn't celebrating success. It's encouraging pursuit. Your brain is saying, go, keep moving. The reward might be just ahead, thousands of years later. That same system still operates inside your brain, only now, instead of searching for fruit, you're searching for notifications, likes, messages, videos, emails, sales, entertainment. Your brain doesn't know the difference. It simply follows whatever promises the fastest reward. That is why your phone feels impossible to ignore. Every notification represents a possibility. Every refresh offers uncertainty. Every scroll might reveal something exciting. Psychologists call this variable reward, and it is one of the most powerful behavioral mechanisms ever discovered. The same principle has been studied in gambling. Slot machines do not reward players every time. They reward them unpredictably. That unpredictability keeps people pulling the lever. Social media platforms use a remarkably similar system. Sometimes your post receives 10 likes. Sometimes it receives 1,000. Sometimes nothing happens at all. Your brain keeps checking because it cannot predict the outcome. Every refresh creates anticipation. Every notification triggers another surge of dopamine without realizing it. Your attention has become the reward, but here's the frightening part. Your brain doesn't distinguish between what is meaningful and what is merely stimulating. It responds to both. That means checking your phone every few minutes and writing the first chapter of your book compete inside exactly the same reward system. One activity offers an immediate payoff. The other offers a delayed reward. Guess which one your brain naturally prefers. This isn't a character flaw. It's biology. Researchers have repeatedly demonstrated that human beings are remarkably poor at choosing long-term rewards when immediate rewards are available. Economists call it present bias. Psychologists describe it as temporal discounting. Your brain assigns greater value to rewards available now than rewards waiting in the future. Imagine someone offers you two choices, £50 today or £100 next month. Logically, waiting earns twice as much money. Yet many people still choose the immediate reward, not because they lack intelligence, because their brain discounts the future. Now apply that principle to everyday life. Would you rather experience the immediate pleasure of watching another episode, or the delayed reward of finishing your degree? Would you rather enjoy another hour scrolling social media, or spend that hour building a business that may succeed years from now? Would you rather eat food that satisfies you tonight, or build the healthier body you want next summer? Every day, your brain quietly negotiates between the present and the future. And unless you understand how that negotiation works, the present usually wins. This is why motivation feels so unreliable. Motivation follows dopamine. Dopamine follows anticipation. And anticipation follows whatever appears most rewarding right now. That means motivation isn't under your conscious control nearly as much as people imagine. It's constantly being shaped by your environment. Look around the room you're sitting in, your phone, your television, your laptop, your gaming console, your snacks. Every object competes for one limited resource, your attention. Companies spend billions of pounds every year hiring neuroscientists, psychologists, designers, and behavioral scientists to answer one question. How do we keep people engaged for just one more minute? Because attention has become one of the world's most valuable commodities. Every notification, every autoplay video, every recommendation algorithm, every colorful icon, every vibration in your pocket, they're not random. They're designed to activate ancient reward systems that evolved long before modern technology existed. Once you understand that, you begin to realize something extraordinary. You aren't fighting a lack of motivation. You're competing against systems specifically designed to capture it. And suddenly, your struggle begins to make sense. If you've made it this far, chances are you've already started seeing your own habits differently. Take a moment to subscribe to The Human Code. Every documentary we create explores the hidden psychology behind everyday behavior using real neuroscience, psychology, and behavioral science. And if this documentary has already challenged something you've always believed, share it with someone who thinks they simply lack motivation. They may discover the problem isn't motivation at all. But despite everything you've heard, there is still one mystery left unanswered. If dopamine constantly pushes us toward easy rewards, how do some people build extraordinary discipline? How do Olympic athletes train when they don't feel like it? How do authors write every single day? How do entrepreneurs continue working after repeated failure? What do they know that most people don't? The answer isn't stronger motivation. In fact, it has almost nothing to do with motivation at all. It begins with a psychological principle so powerful that once you understand it, you'll never rely on motivation again. Why disciplined people don't rely on motivation. Imagine waking up at 5 o'clock every morning. The alarm rings. Outside, it's still dark. You're tired. Your bed feels warmer than ever. No one is watching. No one would blame you for pressing the snooze button. Yet somewhere, at that exact moment, thousands of people are already getting out of bed. Olympic athletes begin another training session. Writers sit in front of a blank page. Entrepreneurs open their laptops. Musicians start practicing. Students begin revising. Here's the question most people ask. How are they so motivated? Ironically, that's the wrong question. Researchers who have spent decades studying elite performers have discovered something surprising. Most highly disciplined people aren't highly motivated. In fact, many of them feel exactly the same resistance everyone else feels. They wake up tired. They doubt themselves. They procrastinate. They become distracted. They lose confidence. The difference isn't what they feel, it's what they do next. One of the most influential ideas in modern psychology comes from researcher Dr. Wendy Wood, whose work suggests that a large proportion of our everyday behavior isn't driven by conscious decisions at all. Instead, much of it is shaped by habits that become increasingly automatic through repetition. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wake up each morning asking yourself whether you feel motivated enough. You simply do it. The behavior has become automatic. Now imagine if exercising, studying, writing, saving money, or reading became just as automatic. Suddenly, motivation becomes almost irrelevant, because habits require far less mental effort than constant decision-making. This reveals one of the biggest lies the self-improvement industry has ever sold. Success doesn't come from making better decisions every day. It comes from needing to make fewer decisions altogether. Every decision drains mental energy. Psychologists refer to this as decision fatigue. The more choices you make throughout the day, the more difficult each new choice becomes. Should I work out? Should I study? Should I cook? Should I write? Should I go tomorrow instead? Your brain becomes exhausted long before your body does. Disciplined people solve this problem differently. They remove the decision. The workout happens at 6 o'clock every morning. The writing begins at 8 every day. The reading starts before bed every night. No debate, no negotiation, no waiting for inspiration. Eventually, the behavior becomes part of who they are. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, describes this beautifully. Every action you repeat becomes a vote for the type of person you believe yourself to be. You don't run because you're motivated. You run because you're becoming a runner. You don't write because you feel inspired. You write because you're becoming a writer. Identity changes behavior more powerfully than motivation ever can. Think about someone trying to quit smoking. One person says, "I'm trying to stop smoking." Another says, "I don't smoke." Those two statements sound almost identical. Psychologically, they're worlds apart. The first person is resisting temptation. The second person has changed identity. That subtle difference dramatically changes behavior, because the brain constantly tries to remain consistent with the identity it believes is true. This explains why lasting change rarely begins with goals. It begins with identity. Most people ask, "What do I want to achieve?" Successful people ask, "Who do I want to become?" That single question changes everything. Imagine two students preparing for the same exam. One studies only when motivation appears. Some days they work for 6 hours. Other days they do nothing. The second student studies for 30 minutes every evening at exactly the same time. Nothing extraordinary, nothing exciting. 6 months later, which student performs better? Almost always the second. Not because they worked harder, because consistency quietly defeated intensity. This principle appears everywhere. A person who saves 10 pounds every day often accumulates more wealth than someone waiting for the perfect investment opportunity. Someone who reads 10 pages every evening eventually finishes dozens of books. A musician practicing 20 focused minutes daily often outperforms someone practicing 5 hours once a month. Small actions repeated consistently reshape lives. Not because they're dramatic, because they're sustainable. This is where neuroscience offers another remarkable insight. Every time you repeat a behavior, the neural pathways responsible for that behavior become slightly stronger. Your brain, literally, becomes more efficient at performing the same action. What once required enormous effort gradually becomes easier. Eventually, it feels natural. That is the hidden power of discipline. It isn't about forcing yourself forever. It's about reducing the amount of force required over time. If this documentary has already changed the way you think about discipline and motivation, subscribe to The Human Code. Every week we explore the hidden science of psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior through cinematic documentaries designed to help you understand yourself on a deeper level. And if you know someone who believes they simply lack discipline, send them this video. It might completely change how they approach their goals. But there's still one question that remains unanswered. If discipline is built through habits, why do so many people abandon good habits after only a few weeks? Why do gym memberships peak every January, only to empty by February? Why do so many ambitious goals quietly disappear? The answer has nothing to do with willpower. It has everything to do with something you're environment has been doing to your brain every single day without you ever noticing. And once you see it, you'll understand why changing your surroundings may be more important than changing yourself. The invisible system that controls your life. Imagine walking into your kitchen after promising yourself you'll eat healthier. You aren't hungry. You have no intention of snacking. Then you notice a packet of biscuits sitting on the counter. Without thinking, you open it. One biscuit becomes 3. 3 becomes the entire packet. An hour later you wonder, why do I have no self-control? But what if self-control wasn't the real problem? What if the decision had already been made? The moment you saw the biscuits? For decades, psychologists believed human behavior was driven primarily by conscious choice. Today, behavioral science tells a different story. Much of what we do isn't the result of careful thinking. It's the result of our environment. Every room you enter, every object you see, every sound you hear, every notification that appears on your phone is quietly influencing your behavior long before you realize a decision has been made. Think about supermarkets. Have you ever wondered why sweets are placed beside the checkout? Why the smell of fresh bread fills the entrance? Why essential items like milk are usually located near the back of the store? None of it is accidental. Retailers understand something psychologists have known for years. Environment shapes behavior. The easier something is to see, the more likely you are to choose it. Now apply that principle to your own life. If your phone is lying beside you while you're trying to study, which behavior is easier? If your running shoes are hidden in the wardrobe, while your television remote is sitting on the sofa, which activity requires less effort? If unhealthy food is the first thing you see when you open the fridge, what choice is your brain most likely to make? These tiny details seem insignificant, yet together they quietly shape your entire life. Behavioral economist Richard Thaler described this concept through what he called a nudge. A nudge doesn't force behavior. It gently guides it, sometimes without you even noticing. Governments use nudges. Businesses use nudges. Technology companies use nudges. Social media platforms are filled with them. Autoplay begins before you've decided to watch another video. Infinite scrolling removes the natural stopping point. Notifications appear at carefully chosen moments. Every feature is designed to make continuing easier than stopping, and your brain prefers the easier option, not because you're weak, because efficiency is one of the brain's oldest survival strategies. This is why changing your environment often produces greater results than trying to increase your willpower. Imagine 2 people trying to stop checking social media. The first leaves the apps exactly where they've always been. Bright icons fill the home screen. Notifications continue arriving every few minutes. The phone remains beside them all day. Every moment becomes another battle. The second person removes the apps from the home screen, turns off notifications, leaves the phone in another room while working. Suddenly, the temptation hasn't disappeared, but the number of decisions has. One person relies on willpower. The other relies on design. Guess who succeeds more often? Researchers consistently find that the second approach produces better long-term outcomes, because changing your environment changes the number of temptations your brain has to resist. And fewer temptations require less self-control. There's another reason this matters. Your brain is constantly looking for cues. A cue triggers a routine. The routine produces a reward. This pattern, known as the habit loop, quietly governs much of daily life. You hear your phone vibrate. You reach for it. You receive new information. Your brain experiences a small reward. The loop strengthens. The next vibration becomes even harder to ignore. Now imagine replacing that cue. Instead of checking your phone every morning, your notebook is waiting on your desk. Instead of opening social media, you begin writing. Instead of watching television after dinner, you go for a walk. The cue changes. The routine changes. Eventually, your identity begins changing too. This explains why so many people fail despite having extraordinary determination. They try changing behavior without changing the environment that created the behavior in the first place. It's like trying to stop a river while leaving the source untouched. One of the most famous demonstrations of environmental influence came from psychologist Walter Mischel's marshmallow experiment. Children were offered one marshmallow immediately or two if they could wait. For years, people believed the experiment measured willpower. Later analysis revealed something even more interesting. The children who succeeded often distracted themselves. They looked away, covered the marshmallow, sang songs, played games. They didn't simply resist temptation. They changed what they paid attention to. That insight continues to shape behavioral psychology today. The people who appear to have the greatest self-control often experience fewer temptations, because they intentionally design environments that support the behaviors they want. That is why highly disciplined people don't constantly fight themselves. They make the right behavior easier, and the wrong behavior harder. Perhaps the most powerful question you can ask yourself isn't, how can I become more motivated? It's, what in my environment is quietly shaping my behavior every single day? Because once you identify those invisible influences, you begin taking back control. And that leads us to the final discovery. If motivation isn't the answer, if discipline grows through habits, and if your environment quietly shapes your behavior, then what is the one principle that truly changes lives? The answer isn't found inside a motivational speech. It isn't hidden in another productivity hack. It's something psychologists have observed in nearly every person who creates lasting change. And once you understand it, you'll never think about personal growth the same way again. The moment everything changes, imagine two people standing at the exact same starting line. Both are intelligent. Both have dreams. Both genuinely want a better life. One spends years waiting to feel ready. The other starts before they feel ready. 10 years later, their lives look completely different. What changed? It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It wasn't intelligence. It was something psychologists have quietly observed for decades. Action changes the brain far more than thinking ever will. Most people believe clarity comes first, then confidence, then action. But behavioral psychology suggests the exact opposite. Action comes first, confidence follows. Clarity comes last. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. No amount of reading prepares you for balancing on two wheels. You learn by wobbling, by falling, by adjusting, by trying again. The brain doesn't wait until it understands everything before it changes. It changes because you act. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself through experience. Every time you repeat a behavior, practice a skill, or respond differently to a familiar challenge, tiny neural connections are strengthened. Over weeks and months, those small changes accumulate, making yesterday's difficult task feel surprisingly natural. That means every decision you make is quietly shaping the person you will become. Every workout, every chapter you read, every distraction you resist, every promise you keep to yourself. None of them feels life-changing in the moment, but together, they become your future. The tragedy is that most people never see these changes happening. Why? Because transformation is almost invisible while it's taking place. A seed doesn't become a tree overnight. A single workout doesn't transform your body. Reading one chapter won't make you an expert. Saving 10 pounds today won't make you wealthy tomorrow. The progress is too small to notice. So people assume nothing is happening. They quit. What they don't realize is that success often arrives long after the work has already been done. Psychologists sometimes describe this as the plateau of latent potential. For weeks or even months, it can feel as though nothing is improving. Then suddenly, progress seems to explode. In reality, the improvement didn't appear overnight. It had been quietly building beneath the surface all along. Think of an iceberg. From above the water, only a tiny portion is visible. Beneath the surface lies the part that supports everything else. Human growth works the same way. The habits nobody sees. The choices nobody applauds. The mornings nobody celebrates. They become the foundation of the life everyone eventually notices. This is why comparing yourself to others is so dangerous. You see their success. You rarely see the thousands of ordinary decisions that created it, the hours of practice, the failed attempts, the lonely mornings, the discipline when nobody was watching. What looks like overnight success is usually years of invisible consistency. Perhaps the greatest lesson psychology teaches us is this: your life is rarely changed by one extraordinary decision. It is changed by ordinary decisions repeated often enough to become extraordinary. That is why the question was never, how do I become more motivated? The better question is, what kind of person am I becoming through the decisions I repeat every day? Because your habits become your identity. Your identity shapes your future. And your future is built one decision at a time. If you've made it this far, you've probably realized something important. You don't need another motivational speech. You don't need to wait for the perfect Monday. You don't need to feel inspired before you begin. You simply need to take the next small step, then another, then another. Because every action teaches your brain something. Every repetition strengthens a pathway. Every promise you keep to yourself builds trust. Eventually, discipline is no longer something you force. It becomes part of who you are. If this documentary has changed the way you think about motivation, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to The Human Code. Every week we uncover the hidden science behind psychology, neuroscience, habits, and human behavior through cinematic documentaries designed to help you understand yourself and the world around you. If someone in your life believes they're lazy, unmotivated, or incapable of change, share this documentary with them. It may be the perspective they've been searching for. Before you leave, I'd love to hear from you. What is one goal you've struggled to stay consistent with? Have you ever realized that waiting for motivation was actually holding you back? And after watching this documentary, what is the very first small action you're going to take today? Leave your answer in the comments below. I read as many of them as I can, and your stories often inspire future documentaries on the human code. Someone reading your comment may recognize themselves in your experience and finally realize they're not alone. Remember this: motivation is a feeling, discipline is a skill, habits are a system, but identity is where real transformation begins. Because the life you want isn't created by one extraordinary day. It's created by the ordinary days you choose not to give up. This is the human code, where psychology meets human potential, and where understanding your mind is the first step toward changing your life. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep challenging what you believe, and keep mastering the most powerful thing you'll ever own: your mind.